I'm joined today by Dr. Everett Ehrlich. He is a former Undersecretary of Commerce in the Bill Clinton administration, also president of ESC Company. Dr. Ehrlich, it's great to have you back on. You know, we talked a little bit about this decision by three federal judges commenting about the FCC's authority to regulate internet service providers and what they can and cannot do. So let's start at the broadest possible place. What was the decision that was made by these three judges?
In essence, I think it's this. The 1996 Telecom Act says that the FCC can do stuff to promote broadband internet, to expand it, make it better, help it along. But there's a line, and it can't cross that line, and that is it can't treat the internet the way it used to treat the phone system back in the era of the regulated monopoly. And that specifically means that it can't impose what some people call net neutrality on broadband providers.
What's the simplest way to understand what that means to the average end user? I've been using what I guess is known as the Netflix example, but maybe there's a clearer way to explain what that actually means.
Well, look, under the old phone system, the only trick that the system could do was close a circuit that made a phone call for you. So every phone call traveled the same way, same terms, same conditions, same speed, because the system was a one-trick pony. But now, in the broadband world, the system is much more complex. It can handle very different kinds of signals. And the point that the courts made is that you can't force broadband to imitate the old phone system and make everything move on the same way.
So prior to this ruling, if we take Comcast, for example, which owns NBC, Comcast had to legally treat the access, the bandwidth of someone pulling up video on their computer from MSNBC in the exact same way that they treat someone pulling up video from Netflix. However, it's possible now that if Comcast wanted to slow down or reduce the bandwidth for someone accessing Netflix versus MSNBC, would they legally be able to do that?
No, that's still against the antitrust laws. That's still a corrupt practice, and it's been against the law for over a century. This, though, I think is what some people think about. Under this new ruling, Comcast has the right to say to all of the websites, all of the content providers, if you want a premium connection, one that's unbuffered, one that isn't broken up into packets, you want the best connection, this is what it's going to cost you, and this is what you get. Just like the second best tier of service will be defined this way, and this is what you have to pay. And it then is obligated to take all comers. So it can't make these editorial or discriminatory kinds of decisions. It can't say, oh, I like you, I don't like you, so you're moving up and you're moving down. That's illegal, no matter what the court said today, or rather this week, this last week. What they can do, however, is say that we're going to have the best, the not as good, the little less than that, and offer tiers of service, much the same way that Sears offers, Sears good, Sears better, Sears best. That's the meaning of the decision. It doesn't give Comcast or Verizon or AT&T the right to discriminate in a way that we already know is against the law.
Let's talk about what the term common carrier means. I've been doing a little bit of reading about some critiques of how the FCC has handled this. And a couple of articles I read suggest that the issue here is that if the FCC had allocated the term common carrier to internet service providers, that they would actually have much broader authority to dictate what internet service providers can and can't do. So let's start with what is a common carrier designation?
Now, a common carrier means that for some reason, regulation has decided that you have to share your capacity with everybody. Like if you're a pipeline, right? You've got to accept all the natural gas or whatever it is that goes through the pipeline. The old telephone system, back when it was a regulated monopoly, was a common carrier. It means that it had to accept anyone who wanted to hook up to it, and so on.
And if I recall correctly, it was AT&T who owned a lot of the lines, but they had to allow other carriers to use those lines to transact communication. Yeah.
And they got that in exchange for being a regulated monopoly, right? The government said, you're going to carry all the traffic that other people bring to you, but we guarantee you a rate of return, we guarantee your profit, and we guarantee you a monopoly. The broadband internet has been built by many different companies at their own risk. So the idea of making them common carriers after they've spent hundreds of billions of dollars is a little outlandish.
Now, could the argument not be made, though, that they were able to build that big business on the backs of so many shared resources, the government infrastructure, employees educated by public schools, and their trucks drive around on the same public roads that everybody else does that the government funds? Couldn't the argument be made that the internet is going in the direction of really a utility?
Well, I don't think any more or less than any other industry. The automobile industry uses roads built by the government and workers trained by the public schools. I think that argument's kind of silly. The 1996 Act drew a line through telecommunications. It said that the old phone system had this common carrier status, but the Clinton administration was adamant from the beginning that whatever this broadband internet information superhighway was going to be, that it was in some province. And there are people out there after this court ruling who say that the FCC ought to look at the internet and say, bang, you're now just like the phone system. I declared it. But this is the Frank Zappa test from his famous song, You Are What You Is. A cow don't make ham. And the internet is not the phone system, and it shouldn't be subject to the same regulations and the same expectations as the phone system.
I do take issue, though, with you saying that the idea that private enterprise being built partly on the backs of social or common goods and services and resources is silly, because this can be applied to other industries, and it's actually been a pretty strong argument. In other words, when we look at, for example, the bottled water industry, or when we look at research and development in pharmaceutical companies, and looking at the fact that in that case, for example, public water is being used. And I guess where I take issue with it, Dr. Ehrlich, is here. When private industry tries to say we are completely self-sufficient and exist independent of government benefits at all, and therefore we should be able to run our business without regulation, that's where I take issue, because hold on a second, you're able to run your business in the way you do on the backs of so many government-provided resources.
Well, look, it's, for example, the internet started out with DARPA, right, in the Defense Department. But and that's the case. And, for example, the wireless broadband world relies on electromagnetic spectrum, although remember that's being auctioned by the government to the highest bidder, so it's not like they're getting anything. I think that where the broadband internet is today makes it less dependent on the government than it has at any point in its history, given the incredible innovation that's gone on, and really entirely in the private sector. It's not what DARPANet was 20 and 30 years ago. And I go a little further. Sooner or later, I think we have to come to grips with the fact that only these companies have the resources to build, extend, and improve the broadband internet. I think that there's plenty of protection in the system. Well, plenty, let me not get carried away. The system has protections if we have the political will to use them against rapacious behavior, against discrimination, against certain classes of users. Those are there right now. But if we want to have an internet that is rapidly moving up in world rankings of speed, that's continually expanding, that balances many different competing technologies, wired, wireless, cable, fiber, telco, and the like, then it's going to have to be done by the private sector, and we're going to have to achieve some kind of partnership with them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. My concern, though, is when we look at the numbers, South Korea, Canada, the internet speeds that they have rolled out, even over the last month, it's incredible that with the private sector leading the way here in the U.S., we still have such slow and overpriced internet. It is truly incredible when compared to other countries.
I think you're exactly wrong. First, the International Telecommunications Union, the UN body, sees U.S. broadband as being among the world's cheapest. And if you look at South Korea, for example, 65% of Korea lives in Seoul, which means they live in cramped little apartment buildings, and wiring up a local loop in Korea really means run a wire up and down an apartment building. Here, it means run a wire through a suburban residential neighborhood. That is the driving difference between internet in the US and internet in Korea. In fact, David, if you look at what's happening in Korea, the average speed of Korean internet hookups is declining, while ours is increasing at one of the fastest rates in the...
Sure, but what we have to consider, Dr. Ehrlich, we can't ignore the fact that that may be because in the U.S., the average speed is increasing because more people are getting any access at all. So when you average in something instead of averaging in zero, that's going to help the average person's access speed. I think we're getting a little muddled, though.
Well, okay, but look, in the U.S., 90% of the population has access to 4 providers of 10 meg or more. In Korea, speeds are declining because now that they're done wiring up the apartment buildings, they've got to go out into the countryside.
Right.
Those are expensive and those are bad connections. It's almost an absurd comparison. I think there's been a lot of disinformation put out.
Well, maybe the South Korea example, maybe I stand corrected on that. I'd have to look into it more. But certainly if we look at Italy, France, there are countries that have a longer history of development and do certainly at least have cheaper internet access when we look at dollars per meg of access. But I think maybe we've gotten away from our kind of main discussion.
All right.
Fair enough. I wish we had more time. Dr. Everett Ehrlich, he is, of course, former Undersecretary of Commerce in the Bill Clinton administration, president of ESC Company. We're going to continue following it, and of course, you're welcome back anytime.
Always a pleasure to be with you, David.
Thank you.
Take care.